My name is David Webb. This is Manny Seifert. Right?
That is correct.
Manny, his nickname is Manny for short for Manfred. Manny is from Germany. He was born in Germany, and he has times where we've talked, and he's told me a little bit about his past. And Manny is I'm just gonna ask Manny some questions, and he's just gonna tell me, some things and answers about one of the things that happened in his life. How old are you, Manny?
82.
82. Okay. And where did you grow up?
I'm born in Heidelberg, Germany on February 11th, 1939.
Okay. So, was that the beginning of World War II?
That was the beginning, yeah.
Okay, so you were coming up at a very early age. Were you seeing things that a young child should never see?
Oh, I certainly have. First of all, during that time, I'm in 39, beginning of 39, and my thing is from age 3 on, so I kept lots of things in mind, what I saw. There was no food. There was food stamps, but there was no food, even if you had stamps for milk or meat or eggs or so on. Like my father had the railroad restaurant since 1936, and we kept, for instance, chickens in the cellar in the basement just to get eggs, because there was nothing to be had. And so to grow up there, like I'm thinking of it, we have no shoes or anything. We had a piece of wood with some straps on top, and talking about it now, I remember getting my big toes bloody all the time. There was children playing on the street or so. There was no balls or anything. There was like a sock with some earth in it or so as football. And that's the time we came up. And I just said to David, I was about 6 years old before I saw an orange or an apple or a banana. And that was only through the American Army. And they came in 45 then, when I was 6 or 7. That's when, even when I went to school with 6 years old, and we got from the Americans, we got hot cocoa. I mean, that was something we just didn't know, at school. They gave us school meals and so on. And it was a hard time. You know what food was worth. You didn't waste anything. And if I go on, then when the Americans came in, they had their field kitchen, not just a couple of 100 yards from us. We had a railway station, and my father got some vegetables and potatoes and so on, and he cooked for the refugees that came through at that time, and all the ladies in town also, they helped him peel potatoes or vegetables, and there was no gas stoves or electric stove. We had in a cellar a big kettle that was built, and it was fired with wood, and that's where he made soup or stew in that, for the refugees. And we got some supplies for that from the army, from the American army when they came in, and they were very good.
So, when you were 6 years old, what was your playground like?
There was loads of cherry cans with gas around, and children liked to play with fire. And I just said to David, the Lord had many times his hands on me. I mean, I definitely shouldn't be around, And there was ammunition around, there was guns around and so on. And just just before the war ended, the Germans, they're thrown lorries full of ammunition, like guns, in the river, which is just beside the railway station too. And all that did, they broke it in half, and that was it. And of course, when the water went down, we kids got those guns out, can I get to the water?
Yeah.
So we took those guns out and we put some string on the trigger because you couldn't put it on the thing. So of course, when the gun goes off, it jumps and so on. And we got away with murder. And that's why I said the Lord has many times his hands on me. And of course, he is not looking what time it is or where it is or whatever. He just was there. And then of course we got from, as I said, from the Americans. I remember the Americans when I first saw salted butter. It was in a big can, getting thin and getting thicker, that can. It was a funny shape. I mean, it was really, that was the time when you really grew up, you know. And there was, as I said, there was nothing in supermarkets or anything. And of course, it also was the time there was no car. Nobody had a car. I remember there was one gas station on a corner, and this man had a car, and he sometimes drove you somewhere if you had to. There was no taxi service or anything. That was coming up.
What else were you finding in the river?
We found ammunition, and when you see those big cartouches or whatever for the guns, we took those big things and got it between the rocks and got the top off. And inside the powder was like spaghetti, you know? And we lit fires with those ammunition. I mean, there was everything lying around. There was no order or anything. And that's what we kids played with. So, I mean, guns meant nothing to us. And then, of course, living in the railway station and growing up, I saw lots of people killing themselves with the trains, you know, committing suicide. And I can't tell you what it is when you see somebody getting caught by a train, you know, and all you see afterward is that chlorine or whatever they're throwing on there. I mean, I can see it now in front of me. And I think why I see those things is because as a child I think you take things out. Or playing on a steam engine, you know, just on the railroad, being on the railroad. And one time we played there and it was shot up by a dive bomber. It was shot up. And we kids on there, I mean, I've seen quite a lot of dead people. So, and even later on in life, I think that.
So you were playing on the trains,
Yeah.
and a dive bomber and a machine gun came by and was shooting at the train,
At the train.
and it was a steam engine, and there was no place to hide.
Oh, but the rails were up top and it went down to the street, and there is a little pass, there's the engine, there's a little pass, and then it goes down. But as a small child, 6, 7 years, to get from that engine down the road, that was one jump. If you look at it, you say it's impossible, but it was possible. As children, you know, I mean, we didn't know what we were doing, but, and as I said again, it's up to the Lord. He kept his hands there on us. And none of us was injured or anything. And remember, that went on for quite a number of years. When you went out on the road, what they call the cherry can or something with gas, I mean, there was just standing there. They were all over the place. And of course, as kids, the American soldiers' kitchen being there. This way we had a good life. But that was only after the Americans came in. And I remember our city is an old Roman city from 900s, and the streets were cobblestones. And I remember that when the Americans came in, it was 24 hours traffic, tanks and lorries and all that, And they went through the city around that cobblestone, the noise. And that sticks with you as a child. But they treated us well, very well.
So you were exposed to death?
Oh, yeah.
It was all around?
There was just a couple of days before the war was over. And as I said, being on the railway station, a couple of 100 yards is the railroad bridge that went over the river. The Germans blew that up just about 2 or 3 days before the war was over. And doing that, they somehow had to get a key for whatever it was to blow that bridge up. And the station master had that key. So it was my father and the station master who refused to give the key up. And they held a gun to my father's head and I wanted to shoot him. And that's when I was there as a child. And you remember that I can see where it is right now, And anyway, eventually they did get the key and they blew the bridge up. And they blew that bridge up, and I can see it as well. There was two rails going over. One went up this way, one side, and the other one went down this way. I can see it. And there was later on, maybe 6 months later or a year later, there was a pontoon on the other side of the bridge. You couldn't go across the bridge. There was a footpath, but that was all gone. And we swam as kids. We swam across the river a couple of 100 yards to that pontoon. And about, I'd say 50 yards from the pontoon, I went down. And there was bigger boys or so with us. And they dived and got me out. Wow. And put me on the pontoon. And about an hour or 2 hours later, I had to swim back. And again, that was the Lord's hand in there. I mean, I was down, they put me up. So I had many times in my life where I thank you.
So, as a teenager, what was your first initial time to start working? How old were you?
I was 14 when I left school. I went 4 years to public school and 4 years to high school. And then I came out, and that was a time, 1953, and there was a time there was no jobs or anything like that, but I needed an apprenticeship because my father insisted that I learn a trade. And he said to me, once you've learned a trade, you can do what you want to do, but you always will be somebody. So he found, about 10 miles away in Mannheim, he found an apprenticeship for me for 3 years. And just if you're interested, I earned $20 a month. In the second year, $40 a month, and in the third year, $60 a month. And if you were 18, then you earned $80 a month. The working hours were from 9 to 3 and from 6 to 10. And you had no weekend or anything off. It was a weekday you were off. And that was 3 years, plus the 3 years was interlaced with 6 weeks at a time with school, which was for my profession. I learned to be a chef.
So, one of your first jobs was working at hotels. Tell us a little bit about that as a
Well,
chef.
when after 3 years, which was about 3 years and a few months. I went in Germany to the Grand Hotel in Bad Aachen, and they called us a commie chef at that time. And of course, after 3 years of school and practice in hotels, you're going out somewhere and you think you know everything. You just forget it. You know nothing. And Germany at that time was, you do, you know. There was no thing, do you want to or not, you do. And that's the way, I mean, you grew up, you know. And after that, after about a year, it was one of those things. You looked at papers for job advertisements. And in my profession as a chef, you looked worldwide. So my first thing was Holland America line, where I came to New York for the first time, and then the Caribbean, and then back to Rotterdam. And I done that a few years. And I got a job in, again, you do that yourself. You write your resumes and all that, send it in. So I got a job in Sweden. And again, from Sweden, I worked in Bermuda then, and then I worked 10 years in Jamaica. I worked 25 years with Royal Caribbean Cruise Line as executive chef. And I mean, all over the place. But you had to do everything yourself, you know. There was no, later on in the later years, there was job agencies then, so it was a bit better. But otherwise, starting in 1956, around there, you had to do everything yourself.
This is a two-part question. Why did you, why are chefs so grumpy? And why did you have to separate the fish?
Oh, that was at my